we will invite Dr. Val Okaru-Obisant, Esquire, who is a CEO and General Counsel and founder of the Afro-Cosmo Development Impact. Look at you. Dr. Val Okaru-Obisant is an adjunct professor at the Catholic University of America in DC, and the founder of Afro-Cosmo Company. Dr. Val has over 15 years of high-level advisory as well as work experience in economic development, business, trade, water, and gender sectors. Dr. Val has a JD degree from Stanford University, Stanford School of Law, and a master's degree in international affairs from Tufts University and the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Don't take no pity for her because she's well credentialed. I can tell you she is also well experienced. So with that, please join me in welcoming her to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Eric, for that introduction. And where's Mary? She's not here. Thank you, Dr. Eric, for that introduction. And where's Mary? She's not here. I appreciate you inviting me. I hope I can stay till the end because I'm rushing to another meeting from here. I'd like to hear my fellow esteemed panelists before I leave. The subject matter for me is actually role of diaspora in promoting trade and economic development, specifically within the framework of SMEs. So what I've done so far, not using my professorial hat, but I understand that some people might not know or may know about the debate about SMEs and diaspora. Who are the diaspora? How many minutes do I have? 20, right?
20 minutes.
Okay, good. So basically, who are the diaspora in terms of definitionally? They're the descendants of slaves and also the African naturalized citizens of the US. So in terms of numbers, 2.5 million in terms of the naturalized Africans, and in the US, yeah, that's a high percentage, 2.5 million to 2.8 million. But the whole diaspora, including the, just everybody from Africa with descendants, the slaves and all, a lot. Who can guess? I guess nobody probably can. How many do you think?
50 million.
Well, you're close. 41 to 46 million. That's a lot. Yeah.
The diaspora.
Diaspora. So basically, that's a lot. That's a high percentage. Now, there's debates over who should be considered, but I think that's a divide and conquer strategy which we shouldn't subscribe to, and I'll address that when I'm talking about challenges in terms of our role. The role we play in promoting trade investment within the framework of SMEs. I don't think it should be a challenge, although it has been, we could, sort of overcome that challenge. But anyway, next, in terms of the next question is, what exactly are the diaspora doing, the African diaspora? The diaspora plays within that framework, I would say, because based on my experience, as a CEO of the Afro-Cosmo Development Impact and also former World Bank diplomat. So now I'm talking from that experience. What we basically do, and I think most diasporas will agree, 3 key areas in this area: access to intellectual, financial capital, and investment capital and markets. Those are, I would say the investment falls under the markets too, right? But you could call it 3 or 4 areas that we service, right? Now, within that framework, what are we doing in our role? There's advocacy role that we play in terms of policy. There's advisory mentorships. For instance, my company, besides doing advisory work, what we call street law form of capacity building for SMEs, we're also supporting through the Tony Elumelu Foundation. I'm sure you all know about him, right? He has a program for SMEs on the ground, both youth and female, where you have to do sort of an exam to qualify. You have to prove that you're a good business person with good acumen. They do a test, and then you advise SMEs on the ground. So they assign us SMEs every year, and each SME gets $5,000 at the end of the program. So what we do is a mentorship. So that's also included. Now, that's within the framework of transferring intellectual capital, right? So there's also the question of financial capital. There are, I would say, the diaspora that are represented within the US, not only in the private sector like I am, but also in the public sector, right? Some of them were like about 15, I would say, were appointed. I would say under the Biden administration, we celebrated them, 15 Nigerian diasporas. 2021, I want to say 2022 March, we celebrated them at a hotel here in DC, and not only Nigeria, all over. The diasporas that are working through that to have impact in terms of investment. They're working at Exxon, they're working at OPEC, the whole gamut. Yeah. So also in terms of access to investment capital. There are in terms of export-import, AGOA is big. A lot of diaspora, they're providing, I've seen them here, you know, Ian, I just talked with you, I know you, so, you know, everybody, look at the Friends of the African Diaspora. We don't only have the diaspora, we have the so really, you know, we have them represented, and so that's very, so, we also, besides the advisory mentorship, investments, within the framework of investments, we provide, when I say we, I mean the diaspora as a whole, there are joint ventures. For instance, within AGOA, besides the access to providing advisory, you know, advocacy, like now AGOA has been renewed for 1 year, going to expire because Congress goes on break in August, so you know everybody's rallying around to see, okay, let's push the agenda. Sister Flora is big on it. She's CCA, you know, Whitaker, you know, they're not here. Angel, there's so many people jumping in on how to push it forward, you know, to extend it beyond just minimal because of the uncertainties that investors face when it's minimal. They don't like uncertainties. So that's one thing. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on our role. I think I want to discuss quickly what the challenges, opportunities are within the rubric of what we're doing, you know, performing our role in this area. The biggest challenge, I think, that diasporans face, because we also, let me put it this way, remit, okay? Do you guys know how many, in terms of how many billion annually diasporas remit to various countries? Well, 80 billion, 80 billion diaspora. The African diaspora all over, remitting to their relatives, and it services SMEs. Correct. Don't forget, there's the...
I think the administration is planning to tax the remittances.
Yes, that, because there's a lot of money to be made. Now there's a diaspora that is now setting up a fund to be able to feed into the process, you know, the banking system, like Western Union and all, because that's a lot of money is made through that process. And when you remit, when I go to Western Union, they charge within $9 per whatever, the amount I send. So that's where the money, there's always money somewhere to be made. So you're right. It's beneficial to the US that we exist as the members of the diaspora community. So that's a lot of money. When you calculate 80 billion, and the money that's being made, you said the administration, but companies are already making money through the commercial sector and all. I think there's some African diaspora entities that are trying to actually build some kind of a network where they can capitalize more on it, you know, for more investments in Africa. In terms of the challenges that, beyond the regular run-of-the-mill infrastructure challenges, you know, in terms of how do I invest if I go to Africa as an SME? How do I get in there when there's no reliable energy to be able to build, you know, help work with a local person? There are other challenges, I think I mentioned that, which is the question of division, which we have, and also asymmetry of information. Where do we go for information as to, and I think the biggest challenge for African diaspora is access to what? Capital.
Capital, yes.
Yes, financial capital. The intellectual capital I mentioned, but also helping. For instance, the challenge for the African diaspora is one, and then when you're advising the SMEs on the ground to have access to, say, AGOA, what are the resources, or to have access to, say, the grants that are provided through, like, the US Africa Foundation or whatever, there is a question about, not for us as much as the SMEs on the ground, the challenge that they face with eligibility requirements. Because the eligibility requirements in terms of definitionally, OECD requirements or what they define as SME is not the same with the definition of SMEs on the ground. And you all know why, right? Because of devaluation. One reason is the currency convertibility issues and devaluation. Somebody who's like in Ghana, cedis, or Naira, or Rand, South Africa, where all my clients are, I'll give you an example. Some of my clients, without mentioning names, I say, oh wow, grant, good. I send it to them. It's a joint grant loan. Eligibility requirement is $250,000 grant and $250,000 loan. But the eligibility requirement to get that is what? You have to have 300,000 collateral dollars. So, for instance, in Nigeria, which is 16, now is down to 1,400 Naira to $1, you could be a millionaire in Nigeria or in Ghana, Rand, or shillings, cedis in Ghana, wherever you are. But when you convert, you're not, you're a pauper. You can't. So we've had situations where we've helped, in terms of the advisory work we provide, for them to merge, to scale up immediately, to merge, like one of our clients, a strawberry farmer, we helped her merge with her mother's company, her mother's farm. It's a food supply chain in terms of sectors. We helped her quickly merge with her mother's, because she was only worth $50,000. But her mother had a massive farm. So by the time we finished helping her with the loan, because I'm also a US Nigerian attorney, by the time we helped her merge to qualify and scale up, the grant had already expired. But the good news is she got another grant from a UK university. They're working on, organic versus GMO kind of stuff. Now she feels, it's like, oh, Prof, I didn't realize that this scaling up thing matters. I said, yes, because you can be rich. She lives very well in Nigeria. Very well, but she's not rich by US standards because of devalued currency. So that's a big deal, and I've been working on, from the policy side, trying to alert policymakers to the fact that SME definition is, and also numbers. OECD 250 we could discuss, but I don't have much time. I think I have how many minutes left?
Another 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. So basically that's one. On the trust issue, I think that the definition of SMEs, I'm very optimistic because it's improved. There was a time when the African, I don't want to criticize my fellow Africans, but there was a time when they were kind of claiming the turf of, oh, we are the Africans and the others, like my brothers who are Caribbean, are not. Not every African. Some thought that, right, Mary? Yes, but we've moved beyond that, and I think it's a nice thing that because it's very important that we come together and know that when we talk diaspora, there's some of us in Peru, all over the world. Colombia, in fact, Colombia has the highest percentage. So definitionally, although you might still find a few people here and there who feel, oh no, they're not part of us, and then those friends of the diaspora, because there's enough pie for everybody to consume. Yeah, so there's the other thing on now, implications within the rubric of the current administration, beyond AGOA and what I discussed earlier. What is happening now for the diaspora, and what role can the diaspora play, and where are the game-changing opportunities? I think that the panel before, Mary, congratulations for that, because people say commercial diplomacy is very important within the rubric of this organization, the current administration, and of course the critical minerals. I think that the diaspora, the role the diaspora should be playing, which it's very difficult. I don't know how to say this. The asymmetry problem. The diaspora understands the nuances of the US system more than I think those who are not diaspora. And the proof is normally in the pudding of what is in the contract. I have diaspora who say to me, you know, we are busy running around and all, and these deals are taking place and we're not at the table. We have all these meetings, we're having all these meetings, and the deal is in the law firms, the lawyers, the international affairs people and all, but we're not invited to the table. How can we get invited to the table? Is it through the embassies? I'm glad you invited embassy. Is it through direct linkage with our people traveling? Travel if you can. Because when they see you, they understand, you know what I mean? If you can afford to travel. There's an IMF World Bank meeting, go there, talk to them, you know. Unfortunately, I don't want to call us Sister Arikana, we still are dealing with issues in Africa, like I said, where sometimes they don't want to use diaspora as much. But I'm optimistic we've made a lot of move changes, and you know, we're moving in the right direction. Within the framework, the last thing I want to say, a number of deals that have been done, the health sector, for instance, the Trump administration, you all are aware of what happened with the Senegal.
Senegal and Congo, they did too.
The Congo deal with Rwanda, but also the healthcare. I'm sorry?
There was a health part too.
Yeah,
The health sector, yes. So within that framework, don't forget that movement of goods is one thing, but there's also within the framework of the Senegalese deal, the health sector, where it's a deal for infrastructure, financing for health, right? And within that framework, don't forget that it's beneficial to the US. The role the diaspora can play is to close, you know, the gap, the non-zero sum in terms of asymmetry, but also, you know, building the bridges, cultural bridges, right? But within, for example, that deal that's now being done, the diaspora can play a role in helping with respect to the health policy issues that need to be negotiated. How do you negotiate? Asymmetry happens when they don't have enough information. And I think the diaspora is better able to understand the US system. You're not selling the US out because you love this country. So what you're doing is non-zero sum games. That's what it's about. Giving them information, because there's a lack of trust in that deal. They're suspicious that, oh yes, HIV, they're going to be poisoning us. You know, the whole question of you know, privacy issues that have been incorporated into that contract. So the diaspora can play a key role in helping, you know, say, African countries to be able to understand the dynamics of what's going on in the deal, besides the regular run-of-the-mill advocacy, policy, capacity building kind of deals. Don't shy away from jumping into contract negotiations issues, how you help them to navigate the complexities of what's going on, de-risking whatever is in there, helping out with those kind of things. Now, that's, I think, about, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. We're gonna use your questions. We're gonna everyone go around and